I'm Kevin Cohn. I'm Chief Customer Officer at Brightflag, AI-powered e-billing and matter management software, but you may also know me as the author of the annual Legal Operations Compensation Report. We'll talk a little bit about that today under the umbrella of our overall topic, which is understanding what's going on in the legal operations hiring market. We're going to touch on some topics like building durable and transferable skills, how to handle situations where you're looking to apply to a new job and the job description is just like all over the place. It says you need 67 years of experience in legal operations and you know, we prefer people who help to build the pyramids, things like that, right? We're going to talk about the differences in perspectives that each of our panelists are seeing. Akshay has led legal operations teams at really large organizations and so has been a hiring manager. Christine is in between the hiring managers and the people who are looking to get hired in a legal recruiting capacity, and then I sort of have this overlay with the compensation angle in particular. But before we dive into the substantive conversation, because you know, it's early in the morning, relatively early in the morning, and as people were coming in and saying hello, I heard at least a few people say something like, I was out until fill in the blank last night. You know, I may or may not be having a little bit of a pool party in my head right now. We'll ease into it with introductions and two truths and a lie. And we'll get some audience participation going, so we'll see just how much attention you're paying and also how well the panelists can lie. Which, you know, very valuable skill if you're looking to be hired in a new role. Just kidding. So Akshay, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
I'm the Chief Operating Officer at SpotDraft, CLM tool, also powered by AI. Interesting how tools are powered by AI these days.
So crazy.
I have been in the role for about 18 months. Excited to be here. You want me to go straight into my...
Let's do it. Two truths, but just so we're clear.
Yes.
It has to be clock appropriate.
Yeah, totally. I don't know what that means.
I didn't say work
I don't know what that means, but sure. Yeah, I'll follow that rule.
What's out of bounds?
Okay, you're
in
not
Vegas,
playing this game.
All right, two truths and a lie. I played collegiate tennis. That's the first statement. Number two, I have actually rapped on stage at a concert. And number three, today is my 15th anniversary with my wife.
Okay, so played collegiate tennis, has rapped on stage. But by the way, played collegiate tennis, this is a pro move in Two Truths and a Lie, is to insert some physical fitness related statement. Because if you think it's the lie, you're calling him out of shape. And so like, it's really like, it's very smart. You've rapped on stage, and today is your 15th anniversary with your wife. Now, I'm going to abstain from voting because I know I've got inside information on this one. But let's see, a show of hands. Who thinks that played collegiate tennis is the lie? See, I gave you some help there, Akshay. I think that you were going to get more votes for that. All right, how about rapped on stage before? Didn't you vote for the first one, too? Okay, and today is Akshay's 15th wedding anniversry. What do we think?
That's so amazing. I'm always, people's choices. We're going to talk about choices today. This is a great one.
So it's just the lie? The
lie is rapping on stage. Although I may get drunk enough to do that tonight. We'll see. It is Vegas.
Still time. There's still time.
And we're off. Okay. Thanks, Akshay. Christine.
Christine Kennedy, Managing Director at Major Lindsey Africa. I've been with them for about almost 7 years. I started out in advisory and moved into, as you said, that legal recruiting space, talking to clients about talent, technology, process, and focusing on the legal talent. Two truths and a lie. Horrible at these games.
True.
Yes, there's one. I gave it away. Let's see. Worked on the World Trade Center litigation. This is my 5th consecutive clock in person, and I was in Vogue magazine.
As like a model or something else?
A writer?
As a,
you don't actually have to clarify.
Yeah.
In Vogue magazine.
Yeah.
Okay. Worked on the World Trade Center litigation, 5th consecutive in-person clock, and you were...
Jumped right into that. There's a voting structure.
Knives out.
Yeah.
Wow.
And, okay, so let's see. Worked on the World Trade Center litigation. Who thinks that that's the lie? See, again, power move, except I'm not gonna call that a lie. That's a public service. Okay, number 2, been to 5 consecutive in-person clocks. See, now everyone thinks that that's the lie, but maybe you've been to the last 5 clocks that have been held in person. We'll see. And then the last one, that you were in vogue. Again, a good one, because no one wants to call you out for, not being good enough to being good. Yeah, one person wants to call you out. You just identify yourself, please. Yes. I'd rather not. Okay, and the lie is?
Not in-person clocks, not consecutive.
Not consecutive.
Jumped on that though, like so fast.
All right.
I think the pandemic kind of helps that one.
So
Some
now
people forget.
So now that we're warmed up, all right. So we're talking about your career, right? Like this is a safe space session where, even though it happens that there are 3 vendors on the stage, like we're not going to talk about our products at all. Like you heard me introduce myself as being a Bright Flag, at Spot Draft, at MLA, and that's the last time that you're going to hear any of those 3 things. We're focused entirely for the next 40 minutes on you, your career, and what we are seeing in the job market as people who are hiring, who used to be hired. Yes?
We didn't get your 2 truths and a lie.
Solid.
I thought we were friends. Okay.
Lie.
Audience demanded it.
Okay. Audience demand. All right.
Popular demand.
All right. 2 truths and a lie. I once got mic'd up for a session like this and then had to use the bathroom, so I turned it off. And I turned it off, went to the bathroom, and when I came back, everyone was screaming. The audio engineers were like, "It was static everywhere. We told you not to leave." All right, number 1. That's a really detailed, really textured one.
Yeah. What do we?
Number 2, this is my 5th consecutive in-person clock that has been run. All right, so a little variation. And number 3, today is my 6-year anniversary at Bright Flag. What do you think? What do you think?
Obviously the bathroom.
Sorry, I promised not to say Bright Flag again, but I didn't know I was going to get called on 2 truths and a lie.
Obviously the bathroom.
You think the bathroom is the lie?
Yeah, they
Who
totally
thinks the
heard
bathroom
everything.
Is the lie? 1, 2, a few people.
Very
Okay.
tentative people, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
5 consecutive in-person clocks that have been held. Thinks that that's the lie.
Run.
I'm going to say that's the lie, actually.
All right. And today is my 6-year Bright Flag anniversary.
Verified.
You all think that that's the lie.
Oh.
Most people think that's the lie.
Hey, maybe it's less.
Maybe it's less.
I should really know this.
It was yesterday.
Failing. Yeah.
So that's the lie. It was yesterday. 6 years yesterday. Yeah, the bathroom thing was true. It's not my finest hour, but then again, not my least finest hour.
Yeah.
There's still time.
I'm still okay. Thank you, Christine. All right, so talking about careers, and what we're going to try to do in this conversation, we're not like going down the line. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? It's going to be like you walked in on our having a kitchen table conversation about a topic that we're all very passionate about, and what we're going to try to do is avoid topics like, is AI going to replace lawyers? Do you need a JD to be a successful legal operations professional? Like, we're going to try to avoid the sort of very well-covered topics and give you more practical advice. And where I'd like to start is on durable and transferable skills, right? So we're in this dynamic now where the knowledge worker labor market is changing extremely rapidly, right? Ever since ChatGPT came out about 2.5 years ago, the way that those of us who sit down in an office, at a desk, and put hands on keyboards or doing work has fundamentally changed, right? We're not talking about AI and legal tech. We're talking about how are we doing our jobs and what are the skills that are going to drive people's careers forward in the future. And I think it's really tough. I think, maybe go to you to kick us off here. Yeah, okay. I wish my ring was that cool. Also, I wish people called me every once in a while. So we'll sort of start with you, Christine, because you're sitting, as I said, right in between the people who are doing the hiring and who are looking to be hired. How are you advising people on both sides of this equation to think through what the skills are moving forward that are going to put you at the top of the pile?
So I have the benefit of talking with general counsels, CLOs, AGCs about the challenges that they're facing and how they think they're going to solve for them with legal talent. So we'll talk through, number one, about what the challenge is. If it's a project-based focus, we'll talk about what project they're keen on. Is it an M&A situation? Is it a litigation that's come in the door and they need fast attention on it, or maybe a skill set that substantively they didn't have? But we really I start to understand it. Then I go out to my team and understand, okay, what are we seeing in the market? Which attorneys are identifying with the skills that would respond to these challenges? So it's not that there's necessarily always a set requirement. That has, I think, evolved a little bit over time. I think probably 10, 15 years ago, you always had to have, an AM law experience. You always had to have, or preference for top law firms, top in-house experience. But one of the trends that I'm seeing, and one of the changes that has occurred, is they're really looking for people who have softer skills, who can be more agile and can respond to the challenges that are occurring, but also relying on some of that foundational institutional knowledge that they learned in law school, if it's an attorney role. And it's also, I think, there's a sliver coming in for legal tech experience. That's also another shift.
Yeah. So, and just by quick show of hands, raise your hand, please, if you would describe yourself as a full-time legal operations professional. Okay. Most people. And raise your hand if you would describe yourself in some other way. So you are a lawyer, or you're a vendor. Okay, well, more than I thought. Okay.
Sorry, can we do one more thing?
Yeah.
Who's in the first 5 years of their career? Okay, let's assume everybody else is kind of beyond the first 5 years. I just want to make sure we're sending the relevant messages as well.
Good mix.
Yeah. Good.
So Akshay, you had a post on LinkedIn yesterday, or maybe it was very early this morning. I don't remember. It's all blended together. And you said there are a few things that AI can't do or can't do yet, right? And I think I'm going to get this right. Think, act, lead.
Yeah.
Right? So when you think about this question of durable skill sets and what the future legal operations professional looks like, what does that mean to you in the context of AI maybe not being able to think, act, lead?
Yeah. The one thing I'll kind of start with, I personally do not like the term soft skills. I think it takes away from the importance of those skills. It's something I've used, and I've really tried to work hard in the last year to kind of get away from that. And I probably will tell you what I'm about to say next, which is that I think if you're in the first 5 years of your career, I think there are a lot of foundational core skill sets of how to do things that are really important. But as you're doing that, the transferable skills, the things that I look for personally in people we hire at SpotDraft, particularly on my teams, things that I've seen really good hiring managers do at Facebook and at Coinbase, are the kinds of skill sets that I think are transferable, and those are the ones that we really need to focus on. Those are things like being proactive, empathizing. These are not things that we talk about enough in our career paths. Understanding how to teach yourself and learn new things. As we talk about AI and just legal technology in general, it is expanding and progressing at a pace that we've never seen before. Mm-hmm. So the ability to adapt, the ability to learn new things is probably the top skill set that I would look for and that I see people looking for, whether it's a lawyer role, whether it's a legal professional role, whether it's a legal operations role. And I think particularly in legal operations, because you're at the center of how work gets done and technology to get it done, I think those kinds of skill sets are the ones that you're really going to be looking for.
So let's build on that. Adapt and evolve, you said. And let's give a specific example, all right? And you and I have talked about this before. Raise your hand if you think that you are great at using Excel. Like you consider that to be a strength of yours. All right, fair number of people. I have bad news for you. Like the value of that skill has cratered over the last 2 years. Like, it's been borderline eviscerated because you can just type into a tool like ChatGPT, this is what I need out of the data, and it does it for you. It does the formulas, it does the pivoting, it does all of the analysis, right? Raise your hand if you would consider yourself to be a really strong writer and copy editor.
Particularly that last one.
Like, I've got bad news for you again, right? So the adapt and evolve, like that's what I'm trying to get at here is there's a set of skills, and you say like you don't like the term soft skills. I'll tell you a secret, and I know this has been recorded. I don't really like the term legal operations because I think people over-index on operations, and they say, okay, we need to be good at the data flows and the analysis and the spreadsheets and all of this stuff, but the problem is ChatGPT is better at operations than you are.
Yeah.
But AI is not capable of doing the leading, of doing the change management, of doing all of the other things that Akshay was just talking about. So we're in a situation now where I'm sure, Christine, if we rewound 5 years and you were helping a head of legal operations or a general counsel to bring in a new legal operations leader or a new senior manager or whatever it is, you would probably, and the hiring manager would probably be asking questions about, well, how are your Excel skills? Because we need to be doing a lot of this, that, and the other thing, and the kinds of thing that you might have been proactively screening for, and now you need to be looking at a completely different, set of capabilities. So how are you helping hiring managers, in particular, like general counsel looking to build legal operations teams? How are you helping them to navigate those challenges?
So it's a really great point. I will tell you that I work with a lot of clients who, while Excel may be cratering, it depends on the legal department. There are legal departments who won't allow you to use some of these AI tools yet. So it's also going to depend on the policies that they have in place. So that's really important before you go abandoning or crushing your Excel app. Hold. There are incredible legal tech out there, Microsoft products, other products, Google Smart Sheets that people have come to use, but it's also, is the organization itself ready to move into this lane? And I think that it's not a question of if, it's a matter of when, and that's where a lot of the hedge is that we're seeing. So we are still using things like soft skills, and I definitely take your point. But I think it's, from our perspective and from what I've seen, is they want to make sure that people have those foundational skills, but they also can be agile when they're ready to go. So you need to have the skills of today. You need to be able to prepare for what's coming. That's, I think, the biggest thing that we're saying. So we're definitely aligned on that, where it's, are you ready to be agile? Are you ready to move forward? But primarily, they want people who can be analytical. Can you consider the challenges that not only the legal department, if you're talking about an in-house role, but also the organization. The legal department is only there to serve the organization. And so they also want you to have an understanding of the baseline of their business. What are their business challenges? A lot of the things I've talked about with my colleagues and clients over the years is really understanding who you're serving, who your clients are. When you're in a law firm, in any one of those roles, legal professional, an attorney, legal operations role, you also have to understand your clients and the external clients as well as the internal. So that remains the same across either of those markets. But I think the number one thing is, as companies get ready to take that leap, they want to make sure that you're ready with them and that you're agile.
Yeah. So let's, we're continuing on in this discussion, and let's sort of just agree in the moment right now, just the three of us, no one else is watching, that we'll actually, for the rest of the discussion, we're going to talk about the present as if it's 5 years in the future. Right? Because I think that will help us to move past, like, you're absolutely right, that there are some organizations right now that are like, no to AI. And I went to, I spoke at a different conference 2 months ago, and it was all general counsel. And, I asked people, kicking off this panel, raise your hand if you have ever, again, everyone in the audience is general counsel. Raise your hands if you have personally used AI in the last 30 days. And I'm like, I know I didn't wear my glasses, but like, where are all of the hands? So there's a question of organizational readiness. Then there's a question of, it's not age, but the length of time that you have been doing a job in a certain way. It's just human nature. It becomes harder and harder and harder to change. So let's focus our conversation on bring the future forward by 5 years. All right. So we're past the will it or won't it, because as you said, it's a question of when, not if. Right. Okay. So we're in this new world in which things like creativity, critical thinking, ability to influence, Akshay, a soft skill, but really like one of the most important skills, right? You've done a lot of hiring in your career, both in legal operations teams supporting super high growth and extremely successful by all accounts, companies, and you're also now doing a lot of hiring at again, not talking about the product, at SpotDraft, where you have a similar sort of growth trajectory, but also the remit is broader than legal. Your remit is broader than legal. So how are you thinking about when you put out a job description? We'll talk about how to write good job descriptions in a bit, or how to handle bad ones. But you put the job description out there, you start having the candidates come in. What are your expert tips for assessing the quality of these candidates in the moment, so that the audience can sort of mirror that and say, okay, this is what a leading hiring manager is doing when they're evaluating me?
Yeah, but part of the answer here is somewhat company and stage specific. For example, if I was hiring at a very large corporation, the speed at which the person would need to move in their day-to-day and what they needed to accomplish, generally speaking, there are always exceptions, is going to be slower than somebody who's interviewing for a similar role at a startup. There's just a lot more to do. There's a lot more at stake. There's a lot more for the company to prove when you're a smaller company. So I do, the people team reports up into me, so we sit down and we evaluate the positions through that lens. To Kevin's point, the hardest thing for us to do is to get the hiring managers to understand that. And I think that's where a lot of this really falls short. And no offense to everybody, I was in this position. I don't think people are particularly good hiring managers for the most part. I think it's a skill set that you have to learn. So to the greatest extent that our people team really cares about getting this right, because it's about a culture, to the greatest extent possible, we actually help the hiring managers go through a little bit of a training at a general level. And then when we sit down for the role and we draft a job description, the quote unquote hard skill sets are towards the bottom of the job description. And we really sit down and we talk about what is this person really going to have to do, not in the day-to-day, but what does success look like in the role? Can we build that into the job description? Can we have that conversation during the interview cycle? And then one thing that I think works incredibly well, and this is something that if I was a candidate, I would look for. They're not going to tell you this outright, but you can get a sense for it through your interview panels. Is each person on the panel trying to get at a little bit something different from you in terms of your skill sets, your experiences, what you're really hungry for, and what you bring to the table? Because if that's the case, then they've put a lot of thought into who this person is and how they're going to fit into the team and what they're looking for in the interview process. And I also think, just from a process perspective, I think the interview goes incredibly well from that sense.
Curious. So raise your hand so all of us are in the prime of our careers. Doesn't matter if you just started or if you're getting close to finishing up, like, you're doing great. And I'm curious, just by a show of hands again, let's place ourselves on a range from, for my next position, I want to be hired for my experience, what I've done in the past, all the way to, for my next job, I want to be hired for my potential, for what's going to come in the future. So who wants to be hired for their next job based on experience? Just by a show of hands. One person, few people. Okay, and potential? Yeah. Okay. Now, and I'm curious, what would
Potential, for
potential?
Sure. 100%.
Christine, yeah. What would your question be? What would your answer be?
It's a lot of pressure. Me personally, I want to be hired for my potential, but I'll tell you from my role, it's really hard to hire for someone's potential. You have to hire based on experience And potential.
Okay, and so now we're getting into job descriptions and resumes now. Okay, now raise your hand, because most of you raised your hand and said you wanted to be hired based on potential. Now, being intellectually honest with yourselves and with everyone else in the room is going to see your hand. Raise your hand if you think that your resume has been written to prioritize highlighting your potential rather than your experience.
Not at all.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think a little bit, okay. And I think that it's, now you might say, okay, like I'm having to write down what I've achieved, which is sort of like definitionally my experience. But I think you're sort of falling into a bit of a trap of not complacency, but like self-fulfilling prophecy there, right? There are plenty of ways to talk about your experience as being a launching pad for everything that you're going to achieve in the future. And this connects in my mind to the topic of durable, transferable skills and recognizing, again, Akshay, to your point, the need to evolve as a skill that once was really highly valued now becomes maybe not zero, but less highly valued, and new skills are starting to slot in. So, Akshay, if you were putting yourself, I don't know, you're very happy, so you're not doing this, but if you were going to put yourself out there now for a new head of legal ops job, right, how would you be talking about your experience to be highlighting all of the conditions in the knowledge worker labor market that are evolving right now, and how your experience, leveraging your experience to illustrate your potential?
Yeah, I could actually...
First reach out to me before you do that. But then yes,
Absolutely.
go on.
I actually kind of went through this as I was interviewing for Spot Draft, so I can actually share some of that experience. I've been doing this for a while. I've been in the legal profession for 25 years, so I can't not talk about my experience. So I don't mean to downplay it, but I think it's table stakes, especially for somebody who's been around that, like table stakes. And so what I talked about with Shashank, our CEO, was, okay, so I've been at these 4 or 5 organizations over the last 20 years. Here are all the things that we didn't do well at those organizations that I think are really valuable for a company to operate effectively. And we spent 2 or 3 months talking about those things as part of my kind of getting to know him and getting to know me process. To me, that's the potential, right? This is what we can do at Spot Draft, because this is where I've seen things go wrong. I haven't done it this way before, so I don't know if it works. But I really think it will. And here's why I think it'll work. And he hired me for that potential, right? I had never been a COO before. That's not something I'd ever done. Yes, I had the foundational skill sets to probably have done a good job. I'll have my performance review later this July, so we'll see if I'm doing a good job. But I think that to me was a real conversation around the potential of my coming to the company. Now, the one thing that, and this is why I asked who's in the first 5 years of your career and who's kind of beyond that. I don't know why 5 is a magical number in my head, but it kind of is for some reason. I think it's tougher to do that in your first 5 years because you're learning so much, not just kind of the hardcore skill sets of what you do, but also how you go about working. But I think once you get past that point, it's really about how you go about your work. And that's where I think the potential, as you learn, as you see how things work, how things don't work, when you can bring that conversation to the table for a potential job interview, I think the conversation turns much more into your potential than your experience.
Let's just really quickly, because there are a handful of people in the room that are in the first 5 years of their career, like really embryonic. I asked ChatGPT the other day, all right, today's my 6-year anniversary at Red Flag, and how many years is that in dog years? And it said, and it get like, okay, you'd like yeah,
Yes.
you don't want to see inside the mind of Kevin. And it said, well, normally like the conventional wisdom is that 1 human year is 7 dog years, but it actually is more complicated than that. Dogs age much more rapidly in the first few years, and then it starts to go down progressively, and it varies by breed, and this and that and the other thing. And meanwhile, I'm thinking like this is all like a little made up because 1 year is still 1 year. But in any event, and of course, the math ended up coming out to like 7.1 years. So I could have just taken the easy route. But I had this thought. It's actually very similar to your career, right? Those early years of your career, you're doing so much more of the foundational development and learning. And so they're super, super important. So let's each share like our number 1 tip for making the most out of the first few years of your career. No holds barred. There are probably going to be some uncomfortable pieces of advice shared here. Akshay, you want to start us off?
Yeah, I think I was really bad in the first so I was a lawyer for 6 years before I went into the business side. I was really bad at understanding business context in my lawyering in the first few years because I was so hung up on doing the lawyering really, really well. And I think that transfers whether you're in an operational role or not. I think you're so focused on the tactical aspect of what you need to do, because you do need to sharpen those skills, that I wish I would have, if I could go back and advise my first 5 years self of my career, I'd say, hey, try to kind of pick your head up a little bit and see the forest for the trees every now and then, because yes, you're living in the trees right now. There's going to come a time where you're going to need to really understand the forest, and you'll be able to navigate the trees really well. I don't know if that worked, but it sounded good in my head. So don't come inside my head either.
Christine?
I think the other thing to touch on is, especially for those here who are in the first 5 years, is let's not forget what we got through the last 4 years is COVID. And so I think in response to that, I think the number one thing I would say is show up. But show up, maybe not with your whole self, but show up your strongest, your most prepared, your most available. I think that is the number one thing. And I don't necessarily just say that in response to the very large trend that we're seeing of folks going back into the office. There is that. I think you have to physically be present in order to really learn the most. And so try to take advantage of those opportunities. One of the things that separated me when I was in a law practice, my first 5 years, was I always had a suit hanging on the back of my door. And for Fridays, we would be business casual, and inevitably there would be a few hungover attorneys who were less on the business and more on the casual, a little more their party showed. But because I had a suit and I was ready to show up, I got to go and argue in front of the special master, and that was a pivotal change for me, just because of availability, because of timing, but really by showing up. And so whether you're in a remote situation or hybrid, take advantage of every opportunity you have to show up, to show your potential, and to show how much work you've done in those first few years.
I think that's great advice, and it takes maybe a little bit of the sting out of my advice, which is very direct and probably not super popular. I think if you're early in your career, you should be in the office 5 days a week. I really do. Like, I would not be on stage right now if I hadn't gone into the office every single day early in my career. And it's a personal choice. I still go into the office every single day. I love it. It's not for everybody, and I know that people have different life circumstances, different responsibilities outside of work, and it's important to balance all of these things. But the reality is there are conversations that happen. There are opportunities for learning and development. And the earlier you are in your career, the more impactful it will be to have those opportunities, or the more impactful it will be to have missed those opportunities. Right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's transition to talking about the job description and the crazy things that we sometimes see. And I'm not talking about, like, you need to have participated in building the pyramids to be able to apply for this job. Like, crazy, like, someone literally posted a job description the other day that said, requirements, must have 20 plus years of legal operations experience. And, like, forget about what the level of the position was. Like, you can't even say you're looking for a unicorn because it literally doesn't exist. So it was interesting, Akshay, as you were talking about your experience in, like, applying for, I know, Shashank recruited you, but, like, applying for, going through the process of being interviewed for this position at SpotDraft, like, part of what you were talking about was, here are all of the things that I think that we didn't do well at previous roles. But I also know, because we've talked about it, you were going to him and saying, here are all of the things that, as a potential customer, I think you aren't doing right now. Like, you're asking me, can you do this for me? Can you do that for me? I want you to fill this role. And you were going back to him and saying, I understand why you're asking for that, but, like, I think you're wrong, right? And it takes a certain level of confidence and experience to be able to go to someone who potentially controls some aspect of your future career and give that kind of pushback. But I think it's essential because, like, what's the best thing like, if you don't do that, then you wind up in this role. The expectations for success are unclear or unachievable, right? And you end up having run the risk of switching jobs only to lose the job 6 to 12 months later. Like, that's not good for anybody. So how do you think about both challenging hiring managers that are evaluating you, but also how do you feel about candidates giving feedback to you as a hiring manager?
I value it as a hiring manager. I've done it in certain roles. I think you have to strike a balance. You need to know, or at least sound like you know what you're talking about when you give that kind of feedback. If you've ever been in a sales role or a consulting role, I think this is a skill set that you probably should have, which is, customer hiring managers coming to you with something that they think that they need. They have an understanding. They may not have the right understanding or the best understanding. And your ability to be a little bit of a coach in that moment, but how you coach is critical. I coach my kids. I was really bad at it early on. They didn't listen to me. They didn't like dad coaching. And now they really enjoy it because I've evolved the way that I've coached because I understood what it takes for them to be receptive. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But we're on that journey together, right? And that's really when you're working with somebody, you're on a journey together. So that first kind of dynamic and relationship in coaching them through something like a job description or, hey, it says, I don't know, let's say it says 20 years of legal operations experience. Just want to be clear, and maybe you're having this with the recruiting person or something. Just to be clear, it hasn't really been around that long. So can you help me understand why 20 years is here, right? So it's not like, why the fuck is 20 years on this job description?
There's a way of saying that,
although
right?
you can say that in your head plenty, just don't say it out loud.
Yeah.
But it's like, hey, help me understand. Why does this say 20 years? What is it? Oh, gosh, I don't know. That's probably what they're going to say. And that can apply to various aspects of the job description itself. I see this a lot, and we'll just talk about legal ops. We're not going to go too deep into like how badly these are written, although they're written pretty badly at times. This says it's a legal operations manager role, but all I really see in the responsibilities are things related to contracting. My understanding of legal operations is that it's much broader than that. Here's how I've been taught to understand it. Here's been my experience. Can you help me understand why this is written in this fashion? Maybe there's a really good reason. And maybe they're like, hey, you know what? We're actually looking for a contracts manager, but we just called it legal operations manager. Guess what? You just saved yourself a lot of pain. You just saved the company a lot of pain, to Kevin's point. So when people are looking for jobs, and I've been in this position, so I very much empathize, it's hard. It's hard because I got to get a job. And that's all true. But getting the right job is far more important. Because the alternative of a bad job sets you back even further. And I think if you can have the courage to be able to have that conversation with the recruiter or with the hiring manager, with the panel, whoever it may be, I think it'll serve you really, really well.
Yeah, and I think, when you're going through that process and you see something on the job description that doesn't line up or it doesn't make sense, like let's take the example of, you'll be managing the NDAs, right? Like that comes up pretty often. Like, there are ways that you can get to the heart of it, like, as Akshay said, okay, so how much of the time is going to be spent doing this? But you could also ask questions about the future, so get a slightly different angle on it. Like, let's pretend that you offer me this role and I accept it, right? And 6 months down the line, I'm spending 50% of my time reviewing and hand-holding NDAs. Would you look at me and say, good job, that's exactly what I hired you to do? Or would you say, wait a second, I'm actually looking to hire someone who's going to put a lot of automation around that process, and if you were spending that much time on it, 6 months down the line, you would be getting a negative performance review, right? I would be expecting you to spend 10% of your time at that point. That's another really great way of testing, really challenging what do they have actually in their minds as success versus not for the role, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Shall we talk about comp?
Let's go.
It's a Wednesday morning. Okay, so if you haven't read this year's compensation report, you can go to brightflag.com/clock and you can download it. We had hundreds and hundreds of legal operations professionals participate, and so you get compensation norms for legal operations roles, heads of legal ops, non-heads of legal ops, different levels of experience, and different corporate legal department sizes. Really, really helpful resource. Literally not a week has gone by since we first released this report 4 years ago where someone hasn't come up to me and said, this report helped me to negotiate higher compensation, or this report helped me to get my team paid the right amount. So if you haven't downloaded it, go and download it. We're not going to spam you. So let's talk about some of the challenges that we're seeing in the hiring market as it relates to comp, and I'll throw title in there too, sort of as an intentional road bump that we have to get over or get around. So because you're in the middle of so many of these hiring processes, what are you seeing in the market?
So I think you have to talk about title, and not so much specific title. When you're in a law firm, you're an associate, and then potentially you work your way up to partner if you're an attorney, or you're an assistant, or potentially a paralegal, or potentially a case manager. There's traditional roles for certain roles within law firms and legal departments. But for legal operations, because it hasn't been around for 20 years, and because it is newer to the market, there's a real problem there. So a lot of what we do is talk to clients about understanding, diagnosing first, what is it that you're really looking for? What does success look like for you in 60, in 6 months, or in 2 years, or in 5 years? So there is a lot of education that has to happen right now about titles, but the skills that go with that, and then you can start to talk about comp. So before we can talk about numbers, you have to understand what are the requirements, what are you really asking of this person. I tend to see it as the Trinity, the 3 layers, the 3 pivots of the different levels, and less about the title, but more about the skill set or the level of acumen that you need. There's that entry level of you're really working on a variation of operations within the legal department or in the law firm, and you're there to work with that team and assist. That mid-level is where we tend to see, and I should say first, at that entry level, I see a lot of the titles coming out for contract specialist or paralegal contract specialist. Sometimes it's legal operations director, but not usually. It really depends on the size of the company, the level of their maturity, their business plan. So there's so many different factors, kind of like figuring out how old a dog is, right? There's all these things that are going to start to come into play. But the compensation obviously moves up as you become more strategic. You become someone who is advising and providing guidance to, let's say, the general counsel even. And they're able to now walk into the boardroom and give strategic advice about how they can create not just efficiencies, but effectiveness for the legal department and for the law firm. That is the I Ching, I would say, of legal operations role. You're in a much higher role, potentially even at the table yourself with the C-suite. It really can vary. That's where you see the biggest numbers. We would like to see people have that path. And so I think one of the benefits will be understanding where you are in your organization and your potential and how to communicate that so you can reach that top level.
So we're coming up on time here. Akshay, rank these for me.
Okay.
I'm going to try to not lead the witness. Title, compensation, responsibility. What do you think is the stack ranking of those 3 when evaluating jobs, and what do you think that our audience should be thinking?
I may have a divergent opinion here relative to the audience, but I have always evaluated responsibilities first in two categories. What will I be doing? What will I have the ability to do? Mm-hmm. And I actually put that to the test. I went from a director level to a senior manager level when I left Axiom to go to Facebook. And I knew that I would have the potential to grow in some areas that I didn't have skill sets in. So I would always put that first, compensation second, title last. Look, I totally get the title allure. I understand it, and I'm not trying to knock it, but they're fairly meaningless because titles are generally, to Christine's point, they're tied in bands to compensation. So they are fairly closely tied together, and there's a whole ecosystem built around that, and I'm not trying to knock it, but if I look at a title and I see somebody at a VP role, or I see somebody at a C-suite role, that doesn't necessarily equate to me as somebody who's better at doing something than somebody else. So that's the way that I would stack rank it. The last thing I'll say about compensation is for legal operations, I think it's all over the place.
Yes.
There's literally no rhyme or reason, and I think that is a complete disservice to the profession. It is a signal of immaturity in our ecosystem for the career. I hope that rectifies over time. I think the more that we can educate legal departments and GCs specifically around what it is, the value of it. I've worked with our HR teams at Facebook and at Coinbase to actually help them level legal specialists and legal professional roles within the legal department. It's not easy for them. It's like trying to fit I don't know if it's square peg, round hole, or the other way around, whatever. It doesn't fit. So I think
Square peg, round hole.
I think it's really important for that education to continue. So wherever you can beat that drum, I would highly encourage you to do that.
Great. I think we've got time for maybe one or two audience questions, if there are any. Yeah, so I think the question is, like, I was brought up to like, don't criticize people that you might be going to work for or that might have influence over your getting the job or not, right? And like, how should you think that through? Yeah.
And prior employers, yeah.
Yeah, I think you can speak on it in general terms. You don't even have to name the company. You can talk about the issue rather than the specificity of the people or the company or the department or group or whatever it may be. Here is a dynamic that I've seen go south. Here was the structure that was behind it, and here's what I would have done differently. Right? So then it's more about you and what you bring to the table rather than I'm shitting on my previous employer, which I agree with. I think that you can do it very tactfully.
Yeah, great advice.
And I'll just add to that too. I think that is exactly as you said. I think that still holds true. I think that advice, because the hiring person at the table, the panel, hears criticism and no one ever wants to be criticized. So I think the best way to turn it into something positive is, these are some things that I had challenges with, or that was challenging for the team or the organization or the role. This is what I'm looking forward to here. This is what I'm looking forward to doing for your team and in this role. So there's absolutely ways to spin it in a healthy way.
There's this mirage of success. People like to believe that if a company has reached a good outcome, it means that they made all of the right decisions along the way. Never the case, right? If you're in a conversation with someone and they're like, oh, well, everything looks squeaky clean, there's nothing going wrong, like, ends the conversation. It's not a good use of your time. I think we might, is there one more question? Do we have time for one more question? I don't know who I'm supposed to be looking at here, but yeah. So like, the question is how to test for potential. How do you evaluate potential?
So we had this conversation as we were prepping for this. I don't remember what day it was. My brother's going through something right now. He's and I'll just share this as an anecdote. He's interviewing for a very important role. As he's going into the final panel, he went to the agency's website and he downloaded their strategic plan. He read through it. It was like a 200-page document. And he is going armed with all the things that he thinks need to be changed on the strategic plan for them to achieve the goals that the strategic plan aims for. What does that show them? He's proactive. He took the time to understand their business, and he's coming with ideas. I want people who are coming to me with ideas. We need ideas. I know I've been around doing this for 25 years, but I don't have all the answers. There are questions we haven't even asked yet. That's what we need, and especially as we progress with technology and in the legal profession, that's what I'm looking for. So if you can find a way to get that, and if you see that from a candidate, I think that's going to be the right person for you to hire for potential.
And I'll just add to one of the other points. As the hiring manager yourself, maybe talk to them about, these are the goals that we have. It is an organization, here's where we are today, this is what we're looking for. This is an example of a challenge, or it's an example of what is standard and is needed. But looking ahead, this is what we're projecting. How does that sit with you? Can you talk to me about what you might have done that would help us on this journey? Or where do you see yourself progressing with us as we go there? Or what are some things you might think we should anticipate? So ask them more of that conversation, and you've got to give them a little bit to work with as far as the future state and see what they do with it. I think that's a really good tell.
Christine, Akshay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Kevin.
Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone.